you guys, welcome back to Coffee and Lore. I'm trying to scoot back a little bit so my head's not cut off, but the focus is going to be down here today because I am going to do a quick little knitting tutorial. I am so excited because I actually learned to knit at the beginning of the pandemic on YouTube from someone's video, and I'm so excited to show you guys a really cool simple squared blanket knitting tutorial. We're just basically going to do some squares. I believe they're going to be 16 by 25 rows, and in doing those we're going to just sew them all together. I'm going to show you the whole process so that you can maybe knit a throw blanket for somebody that you love. So I have a few tools that you have to have. Knitting needles. There's two of them. Unlike crocheting where you only use one needle, you're going to use two needles, and I prefer 17. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's a little 17 on the bottom there. And I like a big needle because it just keeps my hands from hurting. I start using small skinny needles and my hands start hurting. So that's why I mostly stick with blankets. I don't do a lot of socks or hats or anything like that. So these 17s are crucial. And then we're using Lion Brand Wool Ease. It's a really great starter yarn because it's not too soft. It has a great thickness and texture that is going to be easy to use, and a good wool throw blanket is a great gift for anybody. So I'm using it in two colors, this here gray and a red color that you will see the squares of. So let's get started. Whenever you have yarn, you're going to have one end that is wrapped in this skew and one end here. So I'm going to take this end that is loose here, okay, and I'm going to make a slip knot. 2 fingers, wrap it and pull it through, and so you have a really nice little slip knot here that's going to let you insert your knitting needle. Okay, I like to leave a good amount of tail. Tail is the ends of the yarn that you're not using, because especially with these square blankets, we're knitting all the squares together and you need the tail in order to do that. So you'll see I leave an extra long tail on the other side of this, about arm's length. Okay, I'm going too quickly. So you always start with this right hand. You take your left hand, you grab the yarn. You're going to wrap around your thumb. You've made a little loop here. You're going to push that through, and you're going to pull it, slide it off. It's a really basic motion. This is called casting on. Okay, so we are casting on 16 stitches, and I hope you're getting a good visual of this casting on process. I've made a loop. I am pushing it through. We're going to do this 16 times for a square. Every pattern is going to ask you to do it a different number of times. So a lot of times I'll make blankets that are just basically like a one-shot pattern, so it's not going to have squares. It's going to all be one big piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I almost had it without even counting. Okay, important piece, switching hands. When you're actually knitting, this right is where your stitches are going to, the left is the needle that the stitches are coming off of. You switch hands a lot. Okay, I always grab my yarn with that middle finger to control it. This is what's still attached to the skew. And you see I have all these 16 stitches here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take what I'm moving my stitches to, and I'm going to push through that there stitch. And then I'm going to wrap it around and pull the stitch through and slide it off, thus moving the stitch from this needle to this needle. One more time, push it through the stitch, wrap it around, pull it off the needle. So this is, a step that as you get to knitting, you can do really quickly. Pushing it through, I'm trying to get a couple different angles without dropping my needles. Wrapping it around, pulling that stitch through and off of there. So pushing it through, wrapping it around, pulling it through that stitch, sliding it off of your non-dominant needle. And that is essentially a very simple stitch that we're going to just repeat a whole bunch of times. So once we are going through and we do all 16 stitches again, so we're doing 16 by 25, so a lot of patterns will change how many stitches you do. They'll say, okay, do 16, and then in your next you do 15 or whatever. We're doing the same 16 25 times. And so I'm just trying to slowly show you guys wrapping, pulling it through, sliding it off. Wrapping, pulling it through, sliding it off. Insert, wrap, pull it through, slide it off. So I obviously am a lot faster than this when I'm knitting my regular pace, but I'm trying to really slow it down so that you guys can see what's going on here. I'll finish the second row here. So this is row 2 finished. We're going to do 25 in a square. I will get back to you guys when I have 25 on here, and I'll show you how to cast off your square so that you can have beautiful finished squares that we're going to sew together. Okay guys, so we have got about 25 rows here. So now we're going to work on the casting off process. We're going to switch hands just like normal. Yes, Odin, we're going to switch hands. Hello. He loves to watch me knit, so don't mind him. And we're going to switch hands. And we're going to take that non-dominant hand, or I'm sorry, that dominant hand, and we're going to grab this string with our middle finger just as if we were doing a regular stitch. And we're going to insert in that first stitch, wrap, pull through, slide off. So that's normal. Doing the second one, we're doing the same thing. We're inserting, wrapping, pulling through, sliding off. Now this is where it gets different. I'm trying to get this out of your way, my tail. So you have 2 stitches, correct? When you're casting off, you never want to have more than 2 stitches. You're going to take that first stitch and you're going to slide both of them down, and you're going to take that first stitch, slide it over the second stitch, and keep your tension good. And that's going to give you a little flap down here. And you're going to keep doing it until you get to the end of your 16 stitches. So insert, wrap, pull through, slide off, take 1 over 2. And that is how you cast off. You do a regular stitch until you have 2 stitches on there, and you take the first stitch over the second, and you're slowly getting a flap down here. That's your end of your square. So wrapping, pulling through, doing that very basic stitch, sliding one over the other. It's pretty, honestly, knitting is not as complicated as I thought it was before I started doing it. We're just doing 2 stitches and sliding the first one over the second one to give us the end of our square. Boop. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit to more like my pace of doing it so that we can get on with the video. It's going to be a terribly long video, I'm worried. Okay, so first over second. Continue, continue. I hope everybody's morning is going well. I'm knitting this morning and watching some ID Network, and that is always a good day for me. So we're knitting, we're taking the first stitch over the second stitch. Sorry, my child walked in the room. I'm just making sure she's okay. First stitch always goes over the second stitch. And last one is the same thing. 2 stitches onto your right hook or needle, and you pull it over. So once you have only 1 stitch left there, I'm going to put my finger in it and slide that knitting needle out. I'm going to leave a tail about an arm's length. Cut it off the skew. My scissors stink. Okay, then we're going to take this finger hole here, this last stitch, and we're going to slide that through. Boop, like that. Pull it tight. There's your square. Roughly 25 rows of 16 stitches. There's a little square. And you're going to end up with just, stacks and stacks of these squares. I can't even probably get all of the squares I have in the frame. This is that red color that we're working with. It's very pretty. And I'm going to show you guys now how we're going to attach all of these awesome squares that we have made. So stay tuned. Hey y'all, so we have got all of our squares. We have, I'm trying to keep them low so that you'll be able to see. We have more gray than we do red right now. But we're just going to get started because I want to see how it all gets pieced together. So we have the gray squares and the red squares. And I'm going to show you how I do them together. You're going to need a pretty wide needle here. And I'll show you how I knit them together or sew them. Technically this part is sewing them together. So let's do that. So we're going to get rid of most of this pile until we just have, sorry, let me take that out of my mouth, being rude. Till we just have one of each color, so we're not working with too many things at one time. And remember these tails that we left? These are going to be important, okay? So what they're going to do, I'm really hoping I'm going to be able to show you this well. I'm going to take one of my tails and I'm going to thread it in my needle here. This is a little bit of a finer needle than I would like. Wish I had something a little bit bigger of an eye, but we're gonna, per usual, make do with what we have because I don't know where my real big needle is going to. Well, come on now. I know you can do it. Let me trim it down. Now that ought to do it. Yeah, that's going to do it. There we are. You don't have to have a lot of it fed through there, just enough to get it through. And you're literally going to take this, I'm trying to hide the sun, you're going to take this one and sew it into this one. So, I'm trying to see here. Okay, I have this is the tail I'm using. I'm going to insert it into that first stitch there and pull it through. Depending on how tight your stitches are, it might be a little difficult. And then you're going to bring it back to the gray square and through the red square. So if you know how to do a pretty basic sew, this is cake. You're just going through one square, or one knit into the other. And combining these squares together. Does not need to be super perfect, just make sure you are getting, I'm trying to keep that sun. The sun is trying to come up on me and it is glaring right through my window. But yeah, so you're going from the gray square to the red square and you are knitting, well, sewing that together until it is looking like this. Can you see there? Like I said, it's not real pretty, but once it's all together, it'll look nice. And that's what you're just going to do for every one of these squares. So I'll show you a couple when I have a couple done so that we can reassess. So here we have our two squares coming together. That is what that stitch looks like once we have done the two squares together. I'm hoping I can do this one-handed. So when you get to the end here, pull you into the light, you're going to have a little loop. And you're going to feed, wow, this is terrible, one-handed. So I can hold this so I can show you. You're going to feed that needle through that loop. Marvelous. And you're going to pull it Wow. And you're going to have a knot eventually. And you'll cut this little extra tail off here. But you're going to have that knot that is going to secure your two squares together. And then you're just going to repeat that process into a row of squares. And I'll catch up with you guys once we have. I'm going to start with 2 of each color. And I may end up doing 5 in a row, but I think right now I'm going to start with 4 in a row and see how wide it is. Okay, guys? So, see you back in a second. Okay, y'all. So, here we go. I went ahead and did 4 across. I feel pretty comfortable right now going 4 across. The great thing about this is you can always add another square on the end if you feel like you're going to need it. But right now, I am pretty comfortable going 4 across on this. And yeah, you just make rows like this with all of your squares sewn together. And I'll show you how you do the rows, like how you sew all the rows together once you have rows like this. It's probably gonna take 4 to 5 rows, I would think, to make a decent sized throw, but I will let you know by the end how many rows we end up with of these squares. So this is 4 squares, and I know I have about 25 squares, so I can easily do 5 rows. So I'll let you guys know how many rows I end up with and how to combine your rows once you have 4 to 5 of these rows. So I have been working on this all day, but we have 5 rows of stitched together squares. And I'm going to show you guys how you are going to attach your rows. It's pretty basic. It's the same way that you sewed your squares together. This way, you take the other side of these tails and you're going to do it from top to bottom. Okay, so let me show you guys that. Oh, look at that. I got flash. Okay, guys, so I'm not going to be able to do this with one hand. I know I'm not. But I'm taking one of my tails and I am going in and out of the stitches on the top to the bottom there. Maybe I can do this with one hand. I doubt it. Okay. And then you're going to pull it through like so. And yeah, so you're just sewing each of these stitches together here until your rows are sewed together, and you're going to make one large piece there. In about 2 days worth of work, you will have yourself a beautiful throw blanket that you can just piece all the squares together. I'm going to gift this one to my mom for Mother's Day. So if you're looking for something cool to make for a mom for Mother's Day, they love homemade stuff. I'm a mom. I love homemade stuff. But yeah, it turns out really pretty. Thank you guys so much for joining my video, and I hope that I was able to show you something today. See you next time.